and we're all ready to go.
Good morning, everybody. Monday's edition of SME Business TV, and we have Joanne Bell from Bell's Accountants here. Good morning, Jo.
Good morning, Nigel. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on. I know Frankie and I have got lots of questions at the moment. Things seem to have been sorted out quite a bit for employees. I think they know where they are. Obviously, lots of them are having to have a word with their employers to get that sorted. The self-employed now have a fair idea of where they are, although it missed lots of them, over 50,000, but they know they will get some money at some point. How about the business owners of small businesses where they're directors? I myself am in a situation where all my activities, as you well know, are meetings in restaurants, which of course have had to stop. I don't want to stop activities. I don't want to come back in 3 months' time to no business. So I'm doing everything I can to keep everybody together, to keep advice going, online masterminds. But if I take a hit to my earnings, where do I stand? What can I do?
This is really the issue, Nigel. This is definitely a group that has been somewhat omitted. I mean, we were having conversations earlier that the government has now clarified that directors can furlough themselves, but the issue is that they're only allowed to deal with the legal responsibilities of running a company, i.e. filing their accounts at Companies House and things like that. They're not allowed to conduct any other business activity, which to me, I mean, I've worked out the benefit. If you're paying yourself the director's maximum amount, which is about the sort of £700 mark at the moment, the actual true benefit that you'd be receiving back from the government is probably £370, something like that. By the time you've accounted for the fact that you'd be sacrificing the corporation tax and personal tax relief that you'd otherwise be getting on that money, plus you've paid your accountant to do a monthly payroll, paid them to do the furlough application if indeed they make a charge, the benefit's very, very small. And the exchange is that you effectively have to close down your business in that time. Because you're furloughed, you're not allowed to work. So to me, I certainly would have no intention of closing down my business for that small amount of money. I would be much more inclined to be looking for other opportunities to work, getting out there, networking, finding other income streams, making sure I'm still there and not losing any momentum when this starts again, when this is all over. There are some help in the way of it, depending on your circumstances. There are obviously these grants that you can access through the council if you have a premises. So those are between 10 and 25,000, depending on the size of the premise and what rates you pay at the moment. There are obviously the tax deferrals that they've announced, so no one has to pay VAT in this quarter. Obviously, you do need to be aware that you need to catch that up. That's not, a grant. It just means that it could sort of help ease the cash flow in this period. You can catch up with the VAT later on. Same with your personal tax. So lots of people have got a payment on account coming up at the end of July towards their income tax. That's also been deferred, so that doesn't need to be paid until the end of January. So that's a bit more money sort of left in the bank if necessary. And then really you're looking at sort of the lending facilities that they've offered. Now there's been lots of sort of controversy around this, because obviously the decision of whether to get into debt or not in this difficult time, the director is still 100% liable for that lending. So I think the question as to whether to take advantage of those interest-free loans really is going to come down to whether or not the business was viable beforehand and in a position to afford whatever it needs to borrow to get through this time. And that would sort of indicate whether or not it's going to be in a position afterwards to pay it off, because that's something that really needs to be thought through. The other thing on the tax side of things is the corporation tax, PAYE. But basically, in our experience at the moment, the HMRC are prepared to defer all taxes. It's so long as you call up and arrange a payment plan. Don't need to do that for the VAT. It's an automatic deferral, as is the income tax side. But any other taxes, corporation tax, PAYE, you can call up and spread that over a longer term as well.
I've never claimed a penny in benefits all my life, and I don't think I'm going to during this thing, by the sounds of it.
Good for you, Nigel. I think a lot of people are in that position. I think there was an initial panic as well with the sorts of numbers that they were talking, and scramble to sort of say, oh, what am I entitled to? And it became very clear quite quickly that the benefit was not all it was cracked up to be. I mean, I worry for the self-employed as well, because I think people are making decisions on the basis of that in 3 months' time, you know, they're going to get this grant funding. But the reality, if you're looking at 80% of the profit, is very different to the income. So, you know, if you imagine a business is bringing in sort of maybe £2,000-3,000 a month, that would be covering all of their telephone bills and all sorts of things that they're going to be paying for, regardless of whether they're working or not. But the reality of what the government is offering is 80% of the profit. So the actual amount that people declared on their tax return, which clearly was going to be as low as legally possible, because they wouldn't have wanted to overpay taxes. So they're going to have wanted to have claimed as many expenses as possible. And I think when people actually look at their tax returns, take an average over the 3 years, bear in mind if the business is growing, probably what they earned 3 years ago is a lot less than what they're earning now. So that's going to drag the average down. You know, divide that by 12 to get a monthly figure, then times it by 80%. It's not going to be a huge amount of money for the majority of people. For most people, if that's a significant sum, they are already trading as a limited company. They're not still trading via a sole trader vehicle. So I think for anyone, no matter what the status of your business, making decisions depending on the government funding is a bad idea. You know, what we all need to be doing is being resourceful, looking at other means of raising money or doing business in a different way to how we've done it before. And that's really the key, I think, to getting small business owners through this, not waiting for the government help as and when that may or may not arrive.
I totally agree. I think people are going to get less money than they thought. They're going to have a big loss of earnings, and then the taxman's going to use it as an excuse to hit the self-employed later with extra taxes, saying that he did look after them. So, how about you, Frankie? How's your situation, and how does any of that advice from Joanne help you?
Yeah, so it's a little bit up and down at the moment, and it seems to change quite regularly. We've been through, potentially furloughing a certain level of the staff members, trying to keep on running, and then hopefully, and this is where I guess, so we're slightly different. We do pay ourselves full PAYE. Every member, even the directors, get full PAYE for our business. So it's slightly a unique situation. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to furlough some directors because we were hit very early on, because we run campaigns that target the most vulnerable. So even before we went into full lockdown, weeks before then, we was already stopping campaigns because we target and we provide services to the over sort of 70s market. So they were already self-isolating. They already had the advice to sort of, not have contact with unnecessary contact with people. And a lot of the people go into care homes with the services we provide in mobility furniture and so on. So we sort of have already come to a bit of a grinding halt at the moment, really. So, but we wanted to try and continue to try and find new business. We wanted to try and be innovative. We wanted to try and diversify our offerings, to try and find business in, people that are thriving through the current situation, or people that are offering services in the current situation. However, with the furlough scheme, obviously us not being able to work, it means that it has had to be a complete shutdown of the business. Initially, we was advised that one director still had to stay active within the business, because otherwise operationally the business is in fact sort of closed. So we wasn't able to furlough all directors. Now we're being told that does seem it's the case. So as long as there is no work happening, all directors and employees can be furloughed. And, I do understand the situation with, we only want to take what we need. We don't want to take more. We're not greedy. And if we was in a position and, some of our clients did start up again, and they sort of reached out to us via telephone and said, look, we've got campaigns we want to run again, we would remove from furlough very quickly. But it seems like we are forced to really come to a standstill. And I would prefer to be looking for that business. We literally wouldn't have the money to pay people months moving forward. So we've had to go through the furlough situation. But if I was able to still look for some new business, if I found it, I would remove the staff from furlough and we would carry on again. So where the self-employed, to my understanding, can access the self-employed grant and still continue to work, we're not able to do that, which, you know, and again, I think it's a little bit because there's a bit of a trust issue there. How many people, if they found a new big contract, would remove their staff from furlough and be honest and stop the grants they were getting?
That's
or
a good
people
point.
just continue to take? And I think that's what ruins it for everybody. And it means that, you know, I can't try and find some new business and then get back to paying my staff in the normal way.
I think, Joanne, you make a very good point, and you as well, Frankie. People want to carry on working. People want to look for new opportunities. We've taken the Pure B2B Masterminds online, been really gratefully received and worked very well, actually. So we're learning new skills. And I'm sure most people would much prefer to carry on working if they possibly could. So it seems rather strange. What else is breaking out there, Joe? What other news from an accountant's point of view can you give to businesses to help them at the moment?
Well, the main thing at the moment, the most current thing, is this small business grant funding for those with premise, because the government are coming good on that. I myself has made applications for my grant over the weekend, and I have to say I think the council has come through on that very, very quickly, because when it was first announced, you know, I again was sort of cautiously advising people, don't depend on that money. You know, I've worked with HMRC for many, many years, and local council for whatever reason, and it takes them a long, long time to get these kind of systems in place to be able to pay out. But actually the portals are already open. So I think in terms of the timing, they have been quite honest, you know, to say that the self-employed, this money will be available in June and these grants will be available in April. That does seem to be the case. The question at the moment is the furlough help and the timing of that, because, you know, we've got a few clients in Frankie's position where, you know, the business has effectively stopped and there is no way that they can work around it. My partner, I was mentioning earlier, he runs a gym. So for him, very early on, business closed, memberships frozen, absolutely no money, no real way around that. And of course, those type of larger businesses, they still have huge overheads. It's not like the smaller self-employed where they can effectively go into dormancy. They still have huge amounts of rent to pay and rates and all this sort of stuff. So they need help very quickly in terms of if they are going to pay their staff, continue to pay their staff the 80%, that money has to come from somewhere. So it's really now a case of speed, and we're really, really hoping, you know, where they've said that these grants are going to be available by the end of April, we're hoping that that does come through, because the advice at the moment is, well, you should pay your staff the 80% and we will reimburse you. But the reality for lots of businesses is that they don't have the money to do that. So if the grants do not come through by the end of April, those members of staff will not be getting paid until they do arrive. And there's been a lot in the media, you know, Piers Morgan and, you know, saying it's terrible that, you know, these business owners not paying their staff, telling them they've got to go on unpaid leave. The only thing they can do at the moment is go with what they normally would be doing without these promises of this 80%, and that is to lay them off and put them on unpaid leave. Because until they know exactly when that money is coming through, and indeed if they are in fact eligible, because until that portal opens, we don't know what kind of questions they're going to ask. At the moment, they're saying it's available to all small businesses. But, you know, again, until the portal opens and we know what needs to be declared, I don't think we can kind of make any guarantees on that. Interesting, I had a conversation with a client last week. She's an estate agent, and they said about this £10,000 receipts for all companies paying small business rate relief or getting small business rate relief. She said that their governing body had written to her and said that they won't be entitled to it. She has absolutely no idea why. She's written to her MP to find out and hasn't yet had an answer. So already it seems that possibly what was promoted as this is available to all is maybe not. You know, it could be the governing body's wrong for whatever reason. But even that, you know, they've started to exclude certain sectors, or there's rumours that certain sectors are excluded. And I think, well, what if that happens with the furlough? You know, people are making decisions around this is the best thing for us to do. And I'm hoping, as I say, that does prove to be the right course of action. But I think until we actually make an application and see some money start coming through, no one's really 100% certain how it's going to work.
Oh, that's interesting. It sounds like it's good news, but there could be problems. Martin Lewis was on the television last week saying that people who've just been made unemployed or who have just left a company should go back to their old company and ask to be taken back on and furloughed. And that was the government advice. He was saying from the top end of government, he was being told companies should take on employees they've let go recently and furlough them. And the government wanted them to do that to get the 80% out. But you're saying that's a little bit more risky.
Well, I just think, there doesn't seem to be any guarantee. For me as a business owner, that would be an incredibly risky thing to do. You are effectively taking responsibility for paying that person, and hoping that the government eventually reimburse you and that nothing goes wrong or they don't say you're not eligible. And also there's a huge amount of employment law implication around this as well that seems to be sort of being ignored. One of the things the government was very clear on is that furloughing is not a new right that's given to business owners. It's not a case of now you can just lay off your staff willy-nilly with no accountability. That's not how it works. Old employment law still applies. So in order to lay off a staff member, temporarily or otherwise, you need to follow due process. You need to have either a layoff clause in your contract, or if that's not the case, you need to obtain consent from that individual. So there's a lot of other things I think that could effectively backfire on a business owner later if an employee was to take umbrage. I mean, my experience at the moment has been people are saying, even if you furlough me, Joe, I still want to work for you and this and that. And we've said absolutely not, because that's all very well at this moment in time when everybody wants to help. But if it comes to the fact that, well, that grant funding runs out, for example, and then they are on unpaid leave, or you eventually have to permanently lay them off, or even there's a dispute 6-12 months down the line, you end up firing that person, is that then going to backfire on you? Because they're going to say, oh, well, you asked me to work while I was laid off. You know what I mean? So I think where people think that they are being clever maybe, or that they're working the system to help their business to survive, that it's still very, very important that they follow the advice of HR advisors and do everything properly and confirm everything to letter and do everything as and by the book. And the other thing is the timing. I mean, I don't know whether I've misunderstood at the moment. This is my interpretation, but I believe that because the Chancellor said that this will be backdated until the 1st of March, and he said it will be available for 3 months. My reading of that is that really it's going to be available for business owners in April and May, because nobody will have furloughed their staff at the beginning of March. We were still working at that point. It was sort of somewhere around the middle of March, sometimes towards the end. Some businesses were able to carry on until sort of the 20th, that sort of date. So by saying it's backdated to the 1st of March, he has effectively cleverly reduced the government's liability by another month. So really we're talking April and May, we're talking a period of 8 weeks, and then he's saying, well, it can be reviewed after that. And given the announcements over the weekend that this could go on for 6 months or so, the reality of whether he intends on extending this scheme to cover us for that length of time is another matter. But I think it's just a case of one day at a time, really, and waiting for the next announcements. Frankie and I were discussing organisations such as the FSB are lobbying the government to kind of point out those missed sections of the business community, such as the owner-managed small businesses, that don't currently have any help, and we just await further announcements really to see the length of time these schemes are open and what else can be done.
Joanne, Frankie, I've got lots more questions, but the reception at my end on the broadband this morning is terrible. So Frankie, if you could be kind enough perhaps to take over the questions. I'm missing too much here.
I guess one of the things that we're seeing regularly at the moment is what advice is there for those self-employed people who do make more than £50,000 profit per month. I mean, do they just fall back onto the sort of loans and grants? Is that all they can do?
Yes, I mean, I think that's actually a very small sector of the business community, because I'd go as far as to say we don't have any self-employed clients that make more than £50,000 a year in profit, because if they do, they're trading as a limited company. If they are making that amount of money, then they're well into the 40% bracket. So we would be saying to them, you need to incorporate this business and become a limited company and take advantage of the 19% corporation tax rate. So there's not many people I know that, as I say, earn over and above that amount as a sole trader. It's not hugely common. I may be wrong. It could be in the wider business community. There are a lot more, but in our client base, which is really sort of the only sector I have to view, there are not many. But yes, you're right. If you are in that boat, then I think it's going to have to be things like universal credit, which is not a lot of money, but it's something. If you're eligible for that, then you could look at applying for that. Potentially these temporary loans. Potentially the other things are just the things that have been brought out to help conserve personal wealth. So, for example, the mortgage breaks. That can be huge for some people. That's a huge liability, and if they're able to put that on hold for 3 months. And my experience is at the moment the clients are having a lot of success with doing that, contacting lenders and saying, can I take that 3-month break? Doesn't seem to be any consequence. Obviously the interest has got to be paid, but either it's spread over the rest of the term or added onto the end. It's not a case of you've got to catch up with those 3 payments like you would if you took tax breaks, for example. And that at the moment they're sort of not asking any questions, not even asking if you are self-employed. It seems that lenders have been told you've got to allow people this break, and that's the end of it. Same if you pay rent, you're not able to be evicted from your home in this time. So, if you're not able to pay, you're just going to have to speak with the landlord and try and come up with some sort of arrangement. But I think it's a case of battening down the hatches and trying to conserve cash wherever possible. And hopefully there is some reserves in the business to get you through a month or two, at least until such time as you can maybe diversify or look at something else to do. We've even got clients, self-employed clients, looking to get a part-time job at the moment, either in supermarkets or whatever. It doesn't affect your eligibility for the grant, as you rightly pointed out earlier, Frankie, that the self-employed will get the grant regardless of whether they're earning money from elsewhere at this point, whereas the larger businesses and the furloughing are not allowed to work. That's not the case with self-employed individuals, so they can look for other sources of income during this time.
That's an interesting question there, because obviously
the
self-employed are allowed to carry on working, but can they only carry on working additionally on a self-employed basis, or could they effectively apply for the grant and then also go and work on a PAYE, job at a supermarket elsewhere?
Yeah, my understanding is that that's perfectly acceptable at this moment in time. I think they have sort of indicated that they will need to evidence that their income has reduced, or that it has, they will need to evidence how it's been affected or what contract's been lost because of this. But as far as I know, it's not means tested, so to speak. It is based on historic figures, an average of 3 years, as I've said, and what you're doing now is not necessarily of significance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There'll be a lot of farms need pickers this summer.
Yeah, absolutely, Nigel. I'll be there at this rate.
20,000 people normally come over from Bulgaria and Romania who aren't here, so the farm's going to need people out picking all the fruit and veg.
Yeah.
I've done that one summer. I loved it when I left school. It was my first job.
Yeah, I think there are opportunities there. Obviously, there are still, there are businesses that are desperate for staff at the moment, and that's great. I think obviously that's not an answer to everyone. If you live with vulnerable people or you have contact with vulnerable people, it makes it very difficult for them to go and do that. So it's not the answer for everyone. And I think we need to be a little bit careful with, I think some people are taking that sort of stance at the moment. Well, there's plenty of jobs you can go out there and do in the meantime if you don't want to turn to universal credit. And we have to appreciate that some of these people, either don't want to claim universal credit or they have too much savings for them to be allowed to claim universal credit. So, some people will want to go out there and work. I would love to go and volunteer for the NHS at the moment. In fact, I have volunteered for volunteering at home. So the NHS are looking for volunteers at the moment for people who can be on the phone. If people feel isolated or they're feeling anxious or they're in sort of isolation and they're feeling lonely, then they can call a number. That call will be directed through to yourself, and then you're just there to have a chat with somebody, basically. So that's what I've done to try and help the situation at the moment, which I'll put a link down below if anybody else feels like they could sort of offer some assistance there as well. But in terms of actually going out there and doing a role in supermarkets, you know, I'm a little bit family first at the moment, and I'm not sure, you know, my dad's very poorly. He's got leukemia. He needs assistance from time to time. And, you know, I would much rather be in a position where I'm comfortable. I've been isolated for 2 weeks, and if he needs my help, I can go to him, as opposed to going out there and helping out in a supermarket.
That's a very good point, Frank. And I do think, you know, supermarkets are most likely going to be high risk areas to go. I mean, I popped down to get some essentials yesterday down to the car because there's no online delivery slots at all. And I thought, you know, even as I picked up the basket, I thought how many people have touched the basket today. And, you know, you go up to the counter and realistically the aisles are often not wide enough in these small shops to be kind of 2 meters apart, and it's difficult to observe the social distancing. So if you are around a high risk person, I think, yeah, you do need to be very careful at the moment and not take any unnecessary risk.
Yeah, and how does it sort of sit with people with yourselves at the moment who are sort of clients of yours with regards to dividends being removed from any sort of earnings at the moment for what they can claim? Do they sort of seem to, and in your opinion, do you think that seems a fair way of doing it, or do you think it's a little bit unjust what's been done there?
Do you know, I mean, initially I felt it was unjust, and obviously because myself and my partner are in that category as well, we pay ourselves payroll topped up with dividends, and I thought, oh, you know, no help for us. Again, our employees are better off than those who take all the risks and employ them and all of that. But when I did some more research into the reasons behind the government making that decision, it did make a lot of sense. So the reason being, when you take a dividend from a company, it's nothing to do with the amount of work you do. It's effectively a return on an investment. It's a return on the shares that you hold within that business. So the government's argument is they reimburse dividends, they also have to reimburse investors. So if you've got people that have got huge amounts of money tied up in stocks and shares, of course, they're hugely suffering at the moment because the stock markets have fallen through the floor. But the government, you know, are not there to reimburse people for a dive in their investments. That's all part of investing. There are highs and there are lows and there are risks to that. So their argument is that a dividend is effectively a return on investment. It's not remuneration for work, and that's why they cannot look to compensate people for a loss of dividend, because where do you draw the line? You know, you've got people that own vast swathes of shares in companies such as BP. You know, are you going to be replenishing their dividends because of the damage this has done to the economy? I mean, it's not a cut and dry easy answer, because clearly you get silent shareholders and you also get owner managed businesses and all sorts. So the boundaries to it become quite blurred.
I think that's a really good point, actually, and it does make some sense of it. The government, of course, has got too much money, or the country goes bust. Then we won't have an NHS looking after everything. So they've got to keep some kind of balance on how much money they can possibly pay out. So I think you make a very, very good point there. And I'm sure the government are genuinely trying their best to make this work. And it's just that one or two people are falling through the holes at the moment. I think the owners of small businesses are perhaps one of those. We just need to get on with it. And I think your suggestion earlier, look for new ways to actually be making the business work, new ways of working with our clients. Have you had lots of clients on the phone to you asking for advice?
Yes, huge swathes, Nigel. So it's actually very difficult. It's one of my main challenges in businesses. We've got our own challenges of infrastructure changes, you know, trying to manage 30 staff remotely. And we're on skeleton staff because we've had people have had to self-isolate, people who are unwell or have vulnerable people. So we're trying to deal with our own staff as well as supporting all our clients. I mean, the Chancellor's announcement after the self-employed announcement last week, I personally had 27 emails in about 11 minutes. Goodness knows how many my staff had with the clients they're dealing with, because I have very little involvement in the clients directly these days. But I would imagine they were completely flooded. And obviously the issue is, I think sometimes there's this misinterpretation that we have tea with Boris and discuss the rules with him before it's announced, kind of thing. And the reality is we've just watched it on the news the same as anyone else. So we have to unpick the background to it. Usually it's very, very vague. We have 100 questions as accountants of going, well, how's that going to work in practice? Does that apply to this group? Does it apply to this? We've got to kind of regroup ourselves. We sit on a Zoom call every morning and say, right, this is what they've said. Who's heard what? We kind of divvy up the research and say, right, you check the government website, you check the ICAW, Institute of Chartered Accountants, you check the Association of Accounting Technicians, you check with the employment lawyers, and we try between us to come up with some guidance for clients. But I mean, I spent all of last week informing clients that sole directors could not furlough, only to be told that the government had completely backtracked and said and removed the company law, which said previously that a director cannot be furloughed because they have legal and fiscal responsibilities. They then turned around and said, well, actually you can do that. So we've now got to go back again and say, well, you can. We not sure if the benefit's worth it, if we're completely honest, because I think the actual cash value of it is probably going to be around 370 quid a month. By the time you've taken into account the loss of corporation tax relief and personal tax relief from claiming the salary at full whack, plus the cost of running a monthly payroll, plus the cost of doing the application for the furloughing, if your accountant makes a charge for that, we're thinking it's going to be sort of about 300 odd quid for 2 months, because they're saying it's backdated till March, so assumably March doesn't count. And it's quite a difficult scenario to keep on top of it all, and it's an ever-changing beast. So our communications have gone through the roof.
Yeah, and we still.
It's 11 o'clock. I know you've got to get off on some client meetings at 11. Thank you very much for a really informative interview there. That's really been very, very helpful. Sorry my reception has been so bad. I don't know if you've heard me clearly, but certainly I've had trouble hearing you guys. Frankie Jo said she's on the call at 11, so we better wrap up.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me, guys. And I'm very happy for you to publicise our generic email address if you'd like to give people somewhere to go if they need more advice on their personal circumstances. That is enquiries@bellsaccountants.co.uk.
It'd be wonderful, and perhaps if we send you a link to this video, you can share it.
Yep, that's no problem at all. Very happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe. Sorry about the reception. Thank you.
No
We'll speak to you again.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.